Netflix just bought Warner Brothers. The studio that made Casablanca, The Matrix, The Dark Knight and Barbie is now owned by a company that thinks theatres are a productivity problem. And the worst part, Warner Brothers had a spectacular year. They didn't fail, they succeeded. And they're being sold anyway because success doesn't matter anymore when tech companies want your IP. Alright, welcome back. Today we're talking about Netflix acquiring Warner Bros. And why this might be the worst thing to happen to cinema in years. I know that sounds dramatic, but when a streaming company that actively disdains theatrical releases buys a 100-year-old studio with one of the richest film libraries in history, we need to talk about what we're losing. Let's get into it. The news dropped right before the holidays like a round of layoffs designed to ruin your year end. Netflix is buying Warner Bros. Discovery. The deal won't go through for at least a year, maybe never, but the intention is clear, and film fans immediately started posting eulogies, not just for Warner Bros. As a studio, but for theatrical movie-going as an institution. Because if Netflix owns Warner, what happens to theatres? Let's be clear about what Warner Bros. Represents. This is the studio that made Casablanca, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Bonnie and Clyde, The Searchers, The Departed, The Matrix, The Dark Knight trilogy, a full century of film history, and in 2025 they had a spectacular year. They captured the youth audience with a Minecraft movie, posted huge numbers for Sinners and Weapons, revitalised Superman, maintained Final Destination and Conjuring franchises, positioned one battle after another for Oscars, and gave Paul Thomas Anderson his most seen film yet. Distributed Apple's F1 with Brad Pitt. A few years ago, Barbie became their biggest movie ever. So why are they being sold? Because Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav doesn't see those hits as evidence the movie business can flourish. He sees them as assets to goose a sale, and Netflix isn't buying Warner because they value the library or the theatrical pipeline. They're buying it to eliminate HBO Max as competition, and maybe down the road eliminate the broader competition of people occasionally leaving their homes for entertainment. Oh, and the IP, always the IP. Netflix sent subscribers an email announcing the purchase. They crowed about bringing some of the world's most beloved franchises like Harry Potter, Friends, The Big Bang Theory, Casablanca, Game of Thrones and the DC Universe, together with Stranger Things, Wednesday Squid Game, Bridgerton and K-pop Demon Hunters. And read that again. They called Casablanca a franchise. Casablanca, the most name-a-movie movie of all time, a standalone 1942 film. They called it a franchise. That tells you everything about how Netflix views cinema. Here's what's depressing. Warner Brothers didn't fail. They succeeded massively. But success doesn't matter when a tech company wants your assets. Theatres are still open, mostly in big cities, where a variety of mainstream releases, art house runs and rep screenings sustain healthy exhibition. Manhattan alone has more than 24 theatres, but beyond major cities, thriving movie houses aren't a given. And increasingly, it feels like the ability of theatres and studios to weather storms doesn't matter in the face of corporate consolidation. We took theatres for granted for years. Single-screen palaces and drive-ins gave way to mall theatres and multiplexes, but we assumed theatres would always exist in some form. Then COVID shut them down for months. Netflix led a cultural shift toward watching everything on the couch, and now habitual moviegoers periodically panic about whether theatres will exist in 10 or 20 years. They probably will, at least in cities, but Netflix owning Warner Brothers accelerates the question. What does Netflix care about theatres? Look at how many pre-1990 titles they have available at any given time. Look at the awards qualifying theatrical releases they begrudgingly give their prestige projects. A rich catalogue and major theatrical releases are elements of film history that Netflix vaguely disdains. They've worked with Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, Noah Baumbach, David Fincher on passion projects, but those filmmakers often don't come back for a second movie because Netflix won't put their films in theatres properly. In a utopia, Netflix could complement Warner Bros.' slate with lower-budget rom-coms, adult thrillers, teen movies that big studios ignore. They could bring classic cinema into homes while also supporting theatrical releases. But that's not what they do. Netflix treats theatres like a necessary evil for awards qualification. They give films token limited releases to satisfy Oscar rules, then dump them on streaming where they disappear into the algorithm. That's the future for Warner Bros.' library if this goes through. And it's not just Netflix. Paramount launched a hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, which would bring two studios under one Trump-friendly umbrella and further reduce the number of wide releases each year. So the choice is between a streaming company that hates theatres and a consolidation that will slash output. Neither option is good for cinema, neither option is good for audiences. But here we are. Film unions are opposing both sales. Workers know what consolidation means. Layoffs, reduced output, fewer opportunities. But for audiences, the loss is harder to quantify. It's the slow erosion of theatrical culture, the assumption that everything can and should be watched at home, the algorithmic homogenization of what gets made and how it's presented. Netflix doesn't want you thinking about what to watch. That takes brainpower they could colonize with recommendations. They want you scrolling, clicking, consuming whatever their homepage suggests. I know defending theatrical moviegoing can feel embarrassing. Suddenly, we're all Nicole Kidman reading quasi-PSAs on behalf of multiplexes that forget to turn the lights down and don't employ projectionists who can fix technical issues. But divorced from that grandiosity, moviegoing is a simple pleasure, a relatively affordable escape. And some companies are hell-bent on treating it like a productivity problem begging to be solved. Wouldn't you save energy staying home? Wouldn't you save money giving us $20 a month in perpetuity for whatever we scrounged up? Why waste brainpower deciding what to watch? Here's what Netflix doesn't understand. Theatres aren't just delivery systems for content, they're communal experiences. Watching a comedy in a packed theatre where everyone's laughing together is fundamentally different from watching alone on your couch. Seeing a horror movie where the entire audience jumps at the same scare creates shared tension you can't replicate at home. Even dramas benefit from the focus and immersion of a dark room with no distractions. Netflix wants to eliminate that because it's harder to monetize and control. And the library. Warner Brothers has one of the richest film libraries in history. Thousands of titles spanning a century. Classic Hollywood, new Hollywood, modern blockbusters, art films, genre movies, documentaries. If Netflix owns that and treats it like they treat their current catalogue, burying older films, removing titles without notice, prioritizing algorithm-friendly content over actual quality, we lose access to film history, not permanently, but practically. If it's not on the homepage, it might as well not exist. The irony is that Netflix started as a movie rental company. They disrupted Blockbuster by offering better access to films. Now they're becoming what they destroyed. A gatekeeper deciding what you can watch based on corporate interests rather than customer choice. At least with Blockbuster, you could browse shelves and discover something random. Netflix's algorithm funnels you toward what it wants you to watch. And if they own Warner Bros., that funnel tightens. So what do? Support theatres when we can, see movies on the big screen instead of waiting for streaming, vote with our wallets for theatrical releases, push back against the idea that home viewing is equivalent to theatrical. It's not, it's convenient, sure, but it's not the same. And if we accept that it is, if we let tech companies convince us that couch watching is just as good, we're complicit in the death of an art form that's existed for over a century. Will this deal actually go through? Maybe not. There are regulatory hurdles, antitrust concerns, union opposition. But even if it doesn't, the fact that it's being seriously discussed tells you where we are. Studios aren't valued for their artistry or their contribution to culture. They're valued for their IP and subscriber potential. Warner Brothers made great movies in 2025 and got rewarded with a sale to a company that doesn't care about movies. That's where we are. Tech weirdos want control of our art and leisure. They want to turn moviegoing into a relic, theatrical releases into a tax write-off, and film libraries into algorithm fodder. We shouldn't cede it to them. Not without a fight, because once it's gone, once theatres close and studios become content farms and film history disappears into the streaming void, we're not getting it back. Some things once lost stay lost. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one, hopefully in a theatre.